Incredible moment, little girl asks single dad CEO if she can share her meal with a hungry stranger. Marcus scanned the opulent ballroom, where laughter mingled with the scent of gourmet dishes, an extravagant world glittering with golden opportunities and tight budgets. He held his breath, nerves fluttering, as he prepared for his pitch to investors. Yet, amidst the polished suits and exchanging business cards, his gaze kept drifting to Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, who fidgeted at their table. The pressure to present himself as a business titan weighed on him. Every laugh from the crowd was a reminder of his success, yet the echo of Lily's innocence injected an uncomfortable doubt. How could he juggle both roles? He was a CEO, yet he wanted to be a dad. His heart raced as he noticed her gaze drawn to the large glass windows. Her bright eyes widened, fixating on a man outside. He was disheveled, a stark contrast to the affluence surrounding them, clutching a cardboard sign. In that moment, the ambient chatter faded, leaving only Lily's soft voice cutting through the tension. "Daddy, can we share our food with him?" Question marks danced around Marcus's mind. Guilt washed over him, a rush of discomfort swirling alongside the reality of their privilege. He stammered, but the words froze on his tongue. How could he reconcile the polished corporate facade with this poignant plea that sliced through his ambitions? Financial success lingered like a vivid dream, yet another part of him yearned for the warmth of compassion that Lily so effortlessly embodied. The stakes felt colossal, impressing investors was paramount, yet here was his child, searching his face for a moral compass. A paralyzing fear gripped him. What if he followed her lead? The ramifications of his decision threatened the very essence of his identity. He imagined himself drifting away from his ambitions, projecting weakness in a world built on competition. Yet, every laugh from the table felt increasingly hollow against the backdrop of real human suffering not 2 feet away. Before he could respond, the tension shifted palpably. With a sudden burst of courage, Lily stood up, determination etched on her little face, and excused herself from the table. "Lily, wait." Panic surging, he bolted after her, heels clicking against polished floors, each step pulling him into a moral quagmire. Could he truly succeed behind a corporate mask if he lost touch with empathy? "Daddy!" Lily called out, her voice echoing into the uncertainty. The clink of glass and whispers of opportunity faded behind him, replaced with his heart racing in his chest, muscles tense. Time suspended as he watched her little body move toward the stranger, an act of innocence that ignited desperate apprehension within him. Would following her lead obliterate everything he had worked for? Caught between fear of failure and the magnetic pull of compassion, he moved toward her, heart in throat. What did it mean to truly succeed? He wondered in a whirlpool of emotions. Each inch forward felt monumental, decisions piling up like unrelenting stakes. Could ambition and empathy coexist, or was he destined to choose? This moment might redefine everything he ever understood about his role as both a CEO and a father. Marcus's footsteps quickened as he drew closer to Lily, his heart pounding with each stride. The boundaries of his dual roles, CEO and father, clashed violently within him. Was this a moment of weakness, or was it a leap toward a more profound understanding of success? The walls of the ballroom closed in, an echo chamber of anxiety drumming in his ears. "Daddy, he looks really hungry," Lily said, her innocent tone cutting through Marcus's chaos. He finally reached her, crouching slightly to be at her eye level, an effort to connect despite the tumultuous thoughts clouding his judgment. The man outside seemed oblivious to the world of glamour around him, focused solely on the food that might be offered. "Lily," Marcus began, his voice thin and shaky. "We have a lot, but he might not." "Daddy." She interrupted, her gaze unwavering. "He needs it more than us. Please." The plea unraveled the tightly wound threads of Marcus's internal struggle. His ambition screamed at him to retreat, to disregard the disruptions that could affect his carefully orchestrated life. But beneath that ambition lay a growing discomfort. His daughter's empathy ignited something deep within him, a forgotten purpose that had been overshadowed by corporate numbers and lofty goals. We should help him," he finally murmured, testing the words as if they were foreign. The admission felt both liberating and terrifying, tugging at a primal sense of duty, one he had suppressed for far too long. Without waiting for a second thought, Marcus reached for the food on their table, packaging the leftovers Lily had noticed earlier. He would follow her lead, however uncomfortable it felt. An internal shift began. His meticulously curated image of a successful CEO began to blur, revealing fragments of a man longing for authenticity. As they approached the window together, the world outside opened up, a mix of sounds and sights contrasting the sterile air of the ballroom. A quiet confidence surged through him. With each step toward the man, he thought of the challenges lurking ahead, not just in the business realm, but within his own heart. Was this an act of public charity or the beginning of an awakening? Lily tugged at his hand, breaking his reverie. "Here we go," she proclaimed, her little voice filled with excitement. The disheveled man's head snapped up, surprise flickering across his face. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus spoke, swallowing the lump in his throat as he gestured with the offering. "Would you like some food?" The man blinked, uncertainty etched across his ragged features before a hesitant nod broke the spell. Relief washed over Marcus, but it was quickly met by an unquantifiable anxiety. Would this act of kindness resonate beyond this moment? Would it permeate his identity as a CEO, a title that weighed heavily against the backdrop of human vulnerability? Lily beamed, a glow of pure joy radiating from her as she handed the container to the man. There, amidst the shimmer and glitz of the evening, a profound revelation took shape, a subtle understanding that success was more than mere financial triumph. It would involve creating connections, showing compassion, and perhaps, reimagining what it meant to lead in both the boardroom and the home. As the man gratefully accepted the food, Marcus felt a mixture of pride and existential dread. He had stepped into murky waters, questioning whether the choice to embrace empathy would cost him everything he had built. "How does it feel, Daddy?" Lily asked, her little eyes sparkling with sincerity. "I don't know yet," he replied, his mind racing with thoughts of investor meetings and performance metrics teetering on the edge of his consciousness. The ballroom began to fade into the background, replaced by the quiet volatility of his internal narrative. He had reached a pivotal intersection of change, a moment that exposed deep, gnawing doubts about his path. What lay ahead? Would this act of kindness help reshape his professional identity, or would it foreshadow an inevitable confrontation with himself? The question hung heavy, a teasing promise of revelations yet to come. The moment of truth loomed closer, and Marcus felt the weight of his choices pressing against him. How far would he need to go to find true success, both as a father and a CEO? Standing in the dim light of the ballroom, Marcus felt a turbulent shift deep within him. The applause and laughter behind him faded like a distant echo, replaced by the sound of his daughter's joyful giggle. She had seen something he had dared to overlook, and it rattled him. Could a simple act of kindness unlock parts of himself he had long suppressed? Or would it unveil the darker corners of his ambition that he feared confronting? Lily's bright eyes sparkled with delight, while Marcus's heart wrestled with an unfamiliar pang of anxiety. He was no longer just a CEO. This tender moment with his daughter had altered the stakes, inviting him to step down from the pedestal of corporate success. The implications dazzled and terrified him. What if embracing compassion meant abandoning the very strategy that had driven him to the pinnacle of his career? As he observed the man outside savoring the food, a shift began within him. Beyond the temporary relief in that grateful nod, Marcus sensed an opportunity brewing. If he could reach beyond mere numbers and profits, perhaps he could redefine his legacy. A nagging question fluttered through his mind: what if the keys to true leadership lay not in commanding respect but in nurturing human connection? He glanced down at Lily, enveloped in the warmth of her happiness. Her innocence had a way of unmasking his deeper desires, urging him to confront the man he wanted to be. Until now, he had prided himself on building a prosperous empire, but what if that empire lacked soul? As the two of them withdrew from the window, Marcus initiated a new discussion, planting seeds for exploration. "What do you think makes someone a good leader?" he asked, curiosity lacing his tone. Lily's brow furrowed momentarily, as she deliberated on his question. Someone who helps others, not just because they have to, but because they want to, she replied, her voice steady and wise for a child. This simple yet profound observation struck Marcus like a thunderclap. How often had he lost sight of the want to beneath the pressure of a have-to mentality? Internal dialogue wrestled with his ambitions, and home life beckoned him incessantly. The man he aspired to be as a leader and father felt at odds with the corporate warrior image he had spent years crafting. What if there was a path forward that merged both worlds, allowing him to thrive in business without sacrificing his humanity? Returning to the party, Marcus felt as if he were walking on a tightrope. One misstep could threaten everything. The laughter and chatter vibrated against his awareness, each sound a reminder of the thin line he walked between personal values and professional obligations. Finding a vantage point away from the cacophony, he took a deep breath. The discomfort nestled in his gut now sparked an urgency of purpose. Marcus resolved to explore this uncharted territory, daring to challenge the definitions of success that had long encapsulated him. He envisioned the possibility of building an organization that prioritized empathy alongside profitability, where employees felt seen, heard, and valued. But then the reality crept back in investor reactions and bottom lines still hovered ominously on the horizon. Who would support this transformation, and what repercussions might follow? As the night waned, Marcus returned home, appreciating the subtle beauty in the chaos that lay ahead. In the strain of managing expectations, corporate and familial, Marcus sensed a definite awakening within himself. This delicate negotiation would push him to prioritize connection over fear. The night deepened, and he lay awake, the question lingering in his mind: what sacrifices would he need to make to align his business practices with the newfound values stirring in his heart? The answer drifted beyond his grasp, cloaked in uncertainties. He could no longer ignore that a transformation was imminent. He could feel it in his bones. What awaited him at the intersection of profitability and compassion? The anxiety mounted as he wondered, how would he confront his board and investors with this new vision? Would they embrace this shift, or would he find himself fighting a losing battle against entrenched ideologies? Marcus stood by his bedroom window, the creeping dawn illuminating the turmoil swirling within him. His mind spun in a dizzying array of thoughts, each one morphing into the next, a maddening equation where the variables were his values, ambitions, and deep, conflicting desires. He sought a balance he had never dared to imagine, but how could he articulate this revelation to those who measured success strictly in dollars and quarterly trends? He thought back to Lily's words, reverberating as he faced the mirror, the reflection of a man caught between what he had built and what he could become. Could he transform his corporation into something more than a profit machine? This crossroad, now palpable, beckoned him to confront the very essence of leadership. What good were profits if the lifeblood of the company, its people, remained unseen, unheard, unvalued? The office awaited him, a fortress of power and prestige, but now it felt intimidating rather than inspiring. It held whispers of the past, voices that once fueled his drive, now calling for introspection. Could he bring compassion into the boardroom? The thought both terrified and exhilarated him. The image of his investors flashed through his mind, stern faces trained to visualize success as a straight line, a trajectory he had mastered. Would they understand his quest for a new paradigm? As he prepared for the day, he penned a list on a notepad. The first bullet pointedly read, "The old tactics must change." It sprang forth from a place of fear of rejection, fear of failure, and the gripping fear that he might lose everything he had achieved. Yet, tangibly threaded within was a flicker of hope, prompting him to dare the backlash. He vowed to uncover leadership that prioritized human connection above all. Traffic was lighter than usual as he drove to the office, affording him a few precious moments of quiet reflection, even as his heart raced. He rehearsed his forthcoming speech in his mind, envisioning the boardroom filled with skeptical gazes and rigid postures. What would it feel like to stand there, peeling back the layers of a corporate monolith and inviting vulnerability into the conversation? The moment he stepped into the building, an electric charge coursed through his veins. He strode through the lobby, thumbs trailing along the smooth marble counter, a gesture of nervous energy. Each step echoed the conflict within a battle between the urgency of tradition and the dawning desire for a new direction. Skipping the pleasantries of waiting for the board meeting to start, he crossed into the room early, a tactic born from his need to clear his head. Alone, he stood gazing at the conference table, which bore the weight of countless strategies and negotiations. Today, it needed to bear something different, a bold vision for their future. When the board members filed in, Marcus felt the swell of his determination. He needed to speak not only to them but through them, employing their voices to amplify visions of a workplace enriched by empathy. How does our success impact those who work for us? He began, his voice steady, yet rippling with an undercurrent of urgency. What if we shifted our goals to structured care and connection? It's time to challenge the status quo. As murmurs spread among the board members, the tension shifted, their eyes narrowed, brows knotted, and the questions began to surface. What would they say? How would they respond? With each beat of his heart, Marcus understood he was stepping closer to something vital, an authentic mission, a potential reckoning. He had ignited a discussion that could redefine their corporate ethos, but the fear of reprisal loomed large. Would they support his bold vision or push him back into the shadows of traditional business practice? The journey ahead felt precarious, the air heavy with anticipation as Marcus prepared to grapple with both acceptance and dissent. As he took a breath, steeling himself for whatever response would come, one question lingered: was he prepared to risk everything to attain a vision that mattered? He realized the time had come to face not only the board but also the limitations he had held for so long. The unveiling of his true self, even here, among corporate titans, was approaching, and he could either embrace it or retreat back into the shadows of his secure fortress. The silence in the boardroom hung heavy, a palpable tension seeping into every corner as Marcus held his breath, waiting for the first response. Each member settled into their seats, their well-practiced expressions betraying little. "Marcus, are you proposing we alter our entire revenue model based on empathy?" Sarah, the CFO, leaned forward, skepticism knitting her brow. It stung. Her words echoed past his desire to engender compassion. "I'm suggesting that our financial metrics shouldn't overshadow our humanity," he countered. The room's air felt electric, a dance of possibility and dread playing out in real time. He noticed the sharp intake of breath from Stanley, a veteran board member known for his staunch defender role of traditional practices. Would he see the potential in Marcus's vision, or would he strike first? "I understand that improving morale is essential, but how do you expect it to translate into profits? Isn't that our primary responsibility?" Stanley's challenge landed as an accusation, a reminder of the decades-old mindset they were steeped in. Marcus exhaled slowly, recognizing that this was not merely a business meeting, it was a duel of ideologies. What if we could measure success by the engagement and loyalty of our employees? Happy employees lead to satisfied customers, which directly influences our bottom line. The words hung there, and for a moment, he glimpsed the tangled roots of doubt unfurling inside them. Could they accept a shift that rested not on hard numbers but on the warmth of human connection? "We've thrived because of our figures, Marcus. You know that." Sarah interjected, her voice rising. "Or we've but sided with complacency," he retorted, feeling a spark of fervor ignite within him, emboldened by a truth long suppressed. "Our practices haven't been questioned in years. What if we dramatically improved our employee culture? Isn't that worth experimenting with? What if our staff felt seen and valued?" Marcus gathered momentum, emboldened by his own words. He hadn't come here merely to propose a change, he was making a plea for a revolution that began with the most vulnerable people in the company. "We can't ignore that disengagement rates are skyrocketing. Workplaces are abandoning empathy for efficiency. We can be different." An uncomfortable pause lingered, and he realized they were grappling with the idea that traditional metrics might no longer suffice in this evolving economic landscape. As the discussions began to swirl, Marcus felt the tides turning slowly, yet, beneath the surface of his burgeoning hope, dread brewed. Would they embrace the radical? Or would they retreat into the safe, repetitive rhythms of profit-driven dialogue? Marcus, are you prepared to take responsibility if we deviate from our established trajectory? Stanley's piercing gaze felt like a hockey puck aimed straight at his chest. The challenge was stark. This was a pivotal moment, and failure could shatter the very foundation upon which his career was built. Absolutely, he replied, voice unwavering. Change often comes at a cost, but the journey of growth begins when we embrace uncertainty. I am ready to risk it. A deafening silence engulfed them again, heavier this time with the weight of his commitment. As the board deliberated, he sensed a flicker of intrigue sparking among them, but the lingering uncertainty cast shadows of doubt over their potential acceptance. Marcus was left hanging in the balance of hope and fear. He could feel the walls inching closer, suffocating yet beckoning him toward a decision he would have to make. No longer simply speaking of values, he was in the midst of redefining his own. Would they see the merit in transformation, or would they remain entrenched in their comfort zones? With mounting anticipation, Marcus could only wait for the reactions that would unfold, unknowing whether this was the crucible where he would forge a new identity or be consumed by the flames of rebellion. In that moment of stillness, he understood that he was not just fighting for a new business ethos, he was fighting for his very essence. If he succeeded, it could mean a fundamental shift in the corporate landscape, but if he failed, he might lose everything he had worked for. The stakes had never felt higher. Marcus took a stealing breath as he prepared for the unexpected. What new revelations awaited him in the aftermath of this confrontation? Would this be the moment that unlocks the potential of vulnerability within the rigid walls of the corporate fortress? As the board members exchanged wary glances, Marcus felt his heart race, each moment stretched like an elastic band, ready to snap. He could sense the decision hanging in the air, the weight of possibility tinged with profound risk. The minute hand ticked audibly, counting down to a verdict that could redefine him. What kind of metrics do you envision using to measure this engagement? Sarah finally muttered, leaning back with a hint of defiance, preparing to dissect his ideas. Marcus seized the opportunity. We can start with qualitative surveys. Employee well-being indices could give us insights beyond mere productivity figures, he proposed, feeling the gears of strategy grind within him. It was no longer just a defense, he was beginning to map a blueprint for transformation. He watched as their faces shifted from skepticism to intrigue, curiosity peeking through their firmly constructed barriers. Were they beginning to see the raw potential, or was this merely a flashback to futile discussions from years past? Are you suggesting we trade spreadsheets for deeper emotional analytics? Stanley challenged again, but with less fire. This was a litmus test. If he faltered, he might extinguish the flicker of hope igniting in the room. Not trade. Integrate. Marcus stood taller, feeling emboldened by his resolve. If we want real growth, we cannot afford to ignore the emotional facets of our workforce. The corporations that lead today are those who have leveraged their strengths in employee engagement. A moment of silence ensued, a breath caught in his throat. He could practically hear the thoughts colliding in their minds. Would they adapt, or was tradition too deeply rooted to shift? Suddenly, Sarah leaned in, peering at him with a new intensity. You mentioned responsibility earlier. But what does that truly mean? The question echoed like a bell tolling his awareness. What did it mean to be responsible? This wasn't just about profits anymore, it was about changing the narrative woven into the very fabric of the company. He realized that his responsibility extended beyond the boardroom. It was about creating an environment where every employee felt empowered and seen. Responsibility means creating a space where everyone feels safe to contribute, he replied slowly, the confidence in his voice growing steadier. It means taking risks for the sake of innovation. If we fail, we learn and iterate. But if we remain static, we risk our relevance in a world that is evolving at lightning speed. As he spoke, Marcus could feel a subtle shift in energy. His words might have sparked something deeper within them, a resonance challenging their long-held assumptions. The thin veneer of doubt began to crack, allowing a flicker of hope to seep through, yet his own heart raced as he deliberated on the implications of this change. If they chose to follow his lead, the path ahead was treacherous, littered with the remnants of doubt and past failures. But if they clung to the safety of tradition, he risked stagnation both personally and professionally. We need to think about what our legacy will be, he continued, pushing against his own reservations. In 10 years, when we look back, what do we want to see? A climb in profit margins, or a culture that inspired loyalty and creativity? A low murmur spread among the board members. It was a subtle but significant shift, a collective shake-up of their norms, a movement towards the unknown. Perhaps Marcus has a point, he heard someone say from the back, a prodigy from his marketing team who'd been all but silenced in the waves of conformity. Encouraged by this small support, Marcus felt something crack inside him. He was learning to embrace vulnerability, not just as a concept but as a powerful tool for leadership. What had begun as a desperate plea had transformed into an awakening, both for himself and for them. But just as optimism surged, a shadow flickered at the periphery of his mind. Was this budding change capable of withstanding the inevitable pushback? Could he navigate the storm brewing among those? With decades of allegiance to tradition, the meeting began to buzz once more, the debate swirling with an energy he had ignited. Just as he prepared to steer the conversation further, a voice cut through the chatter. Well, if we are to embrace this shift, what's the first step? Stanley's tone had softened, but the glint in his eyes still held the challenge. Marcus's resolve hardened again. In answering that question, he would not only reveal his vision but also summon the courage to step fully into his role as a changemaker. What answer would Marcus conjure from his mixture of hope and fear? Would he step boldly into the front lines of transformation, or retreat into the shadows of doubt? An unknown future awaited, and the moment of truth loomed ever closer. Marcus felt the weight of Stanley's question, a pivotal moment that bore the potential to either rally the board behind him or send his efforts crashing back to the ground. The air thickened with anticipation as he searched for the right response, a way to guide them beyond the confines of conventional thinking. What if we start with pilot programs? He suggested, feeling a flicker of inspiration ignite within him. We could implement small-scale initiatives focused on one department at a time. Measure the impact on employee morale and productivity. He leaned forward, driven by conviction. Let us keep it nimble, open for feedback and adaptation as we go. This way, we contradict the fear of failure. A cascade of nods blinked into existence, but he couldn't fully anticipate their reactions. Laughter from the back caused him to turn. It was the bright young marketer again, Emma, grinning as though she had just tasted something liberating. Are we ready to put our money where our mouths are? She teased, but her tone was sincere. Because if we're going to innovate, we need to take real risks, not just cosmetic changes that fit the old guard. He watched as small sparks kindled in the eyes of his colleagues. With every additional voice adding to the chorus, he sensed a shift from cautious skepticism to tentative enthusiasm. The room began to feel as if it was morphing into a collaborative workshop, and he could no longer differentiate where his own energy ended and theirs began. However, Marcus's exhilaration was tinged with anxiety. What if this energy proved fleeting? What if the moment of inspiration dissolved when faced with the mundane rigors of implementation? The specter of doubt loomed larger, whispering old fear into his ear. Let us also engage employees at all levels, he added, rallying himself as he spoke. They need to feel part of this process. How can we create a framework that welcomes input from everyone? The early advocates were buzzing now, visibly brainstorming what those engagement structures might entail. But a sting of self-doubt tugged at him. Had he misjudged the tempo? Could he navigate this cacophony as the emblem of empowerment, or would he drown in it? Sarah's voice cut through the rising tension. And what about measurements of success? She asked, furrowing her brow. You say we measure well-being and productivity. But when we go up against the company's financial reports, how do we justify the resources? It was a fair question that hit home. Uncertainty emerged as a flock of crows within him, cawing warnings. He knew their decisions were tied directly to quarterly figures. And if he faltered now, offering merely abstract concepts without solid backing, he risked losing their grip entirely. So, he adjusted his course, recalling the data that backed his ideas. We'll use both qualitative and quantitative data. Employee engagement scores alongside productivity metrics, and you will see how investing in our people translates directly into financial returns. Was he entering uncharted territory, or simply reciting the old dogma in a new dress? It was difficult to discern, yet, as eyes sparkled in the rising anticipation, he felt the walls of his own fears beginning to fracture, letting light into the shadows. Time seemed to warp, the minutes slipped away as they coalesced into a single, hopeful direction. "Let us make our first department the marketing team," Emma suggested, full of vigor. "Test out these programs with us. If we're all in this together, we'll rise or fall as a unit." The room buzzed with ideas, conversations overlapping like chords in a symphony. Marcus could feel gratitude bubbling within him. He was no longer the lone voice pushing against the tide, he was drawing strength from his peers, from tangible excitement simmering just beneath the surface, but as the energy turned from frenetic to purposeful, a chill trickled down his spine. The change, if it truly began, would require him to step from behind the veil of safety he once embraced. No longer the isolated architect of ideas, he would need to lead the responsibility firmly resting on his shoulders. "Okay," he said, putting aside the gnawing doubts. "If we're going to lead this charge, we need to develop a clear timeline, action items. But from here, it requires everyone's commitment." And that last word echoed within his mind, commitment. A pledge not just to the board, but to everyone hungry for change. It was both a call to arms and an acknowledgement of the risks they were about to undertake. Just as excitement surged again, a familiar voice broke the bubble of hope. "Will we be able to afford failure?" Stanley posed, the subtext of his question revealing concern, perhaps a vestige of fear stemming from years of entrenched habits. Just then, Marcus felt an unmistakable awakening in his purpose. The stakes were very real. He had to confront that pervasive fear of failure, both in himself and in the boardroom. How far could they push against their limits while still safeguarding their core? Would he have the courage to rise with the potential backlash, or succumb to the familiarity of security? He knew the answer awaited him in the decisions they made together. It was no longer just about collective engagement, but about reshaping his own destiny alongside theirs. What would Marcus choose when faced with the growing tension of commitment? The converging paths of promise and peril lay open before him. The following morning, a nervous energy coursed through Marcus as he prepared for the scheduled follow-up meeting with the marketing team. He paced in the confines of his small office, casting occasional glances at the whiteboard filled with hastily scribbled diagrams and strategic plans. They were no longer just ambitious ideas, they were commitments he had made, and that realization weighed heavily. He took a moment to breathe deeply, reflecting on the stakes. Unsuccessful implementation of the pilot program would not only undermine his proposal but also potentially fracture the growing unity he sensed among his colleagues. Failure would leave him responsible and exposed not just personally, but as a catalyst for change among his peers. It was a dual-edged sword, one that could cut through to resounding success or devastating ruin. Stepping into the meeting room, Marcus felt the pulse of the team. Each familiar face seemed imbued with a determination to push forward. He opened the session with a nod and unspoken acknowledgement of their previous discussions. "Thank you for coming back to this," he began. "Today, I want us to solidify our framework for the pilot program with clarity. Failure is a possibility, yes, but let us focus on what will drive us forward." Emma quickly jumped in, her enthusiasm palpable. "We need to establish how we'll engage the rest of the employees, right from the start," she said, her eyes shining with an intensity that matched Marcus's own inner fire. "Yes," he agreed, sensing a groove forming in their dialogue. "Every employee should feel they can voice their insights." He felt a growing urgency to capture the momentum. If they could maintain this collaborative spirit, they could confront the power dynamics that had long governed the top-down approach. As ideas flew around the room, Marcus took note of them, translating words into actionable steps. They brainstormed methods for soliciting feedback surveys, small group discussions, and even open office hours. The thrilling aspect was that every suggestion was rooted in making employees feel valued and invested in the outcome, yet, the specter of Stanley's earlier question loomed like an ominous shadow. As the team laughed and collaborated, Marcus felt the pang of doubt gnawing at the edges of his confidence. He couldn't shake the thought, what if we fail? His mind replayed the potential backlash against him, the possibility of being scapegoated. But every moment of fear was tempered with determination. Let us plan for measurable outcomes, he asserted. We can evaluate their responses and tie that back into our productivity goals. We'll need to define success, not just in metrics but in how we can transform this workplace culture. Heads nodded. Everyone felt this shift. It was not merely about assessing performance, it was about evolving the workplace environment, creating a space where people felt safe to innovate without the suffocating fear of failure. As energy swelled, there was an undeniable enchantment to the discussions, a collective realization that they were all empowering each other in this endeavor. Minutes turned into hours as they crafted the initial action plan, enticingly cognizant of personal stakes. Marcus took turns listening and contributing. In that shared atmosphere of determination, the lines between leader and collaborator blurred, revealing a deeper dimension of his capability. He was emerging not just as an innovator but as a vital connector among his peers, yet, beneath the excitement lay a tingling edge of trepidation. What if they engaged everyone but missed the key players who were cautious of change? What if the invigorating conversations in this room didn't translate beyond these walls? The meeting adjourned, leaving Marcus standing, staring at the board filled with their collective aspirations. The exhilaration simmered deep within him, but an urgency clawed at the pit of his stomach. Disappointment lurked at the periphery, waiting to take him by surprise. As he left that meeting filled with both hope and doubt, the last remnants of encouragement morphed into a chilling weight. Was he truly ready to face those who would resist this change, or worse, those who would sabotage it? In that unsettling moment, Marcus understood, the journey ahead wasn't solely about strategic implementation but navigating the human elements that drove or hindered progress. With the pilot program ignited, he wouldn't just be leading from the front but would need to confront those who felt threatened by this new direction. The night ahead loomed with a sharpened clarity, an impending confrontation with dissent. How far could he push before he faced backlash from within? Would he recede into self-preservation or step forward into leader's territory, ready to champion a confrontation for change? Marcus returned home that evening, a cacophony of thoughts ricocheting through his mind. The remnants of the day's meeting replayed like a highlight reel, punctuated by flashes of hope and anxiety. He knew the team had momentum, but the question still gnawed at him: could he harness that energy while fending off resistance? As the rain tapped against the window, he sank into the worn leather chair in his living room. It offered a momentary reprieve, a sanctuary where he could gather his thoughts. Absently, he drummed his fingers on the armrest, contemplating his next move. Addressing the dissidents among his peers would require finesse and strategic thinking, yet, in the stillness, he questioned whether he had the personal fortitude to engage with them directly. He recalled a moment during the meeting when Emma had suggested incorporating employee testimonials into the pilot program. While the idea had sparked genuine enthusiasm in the room, he wondered, would those testimonials withstand scrutiny from skeptics? What was the essence of effective leadership if not the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Time and again, he'd been the type to analyze data and devise strategies, but personal confrontations? They posed an entirely different challenge, one that involved navigating emotions and underlying fears. Determined to adopt a more grounded approach, Marcus took out his notebook, jotting down potential strategies for dismantling resistance. He needed to engage the doubters, not merely to persuade them but to understand their fears. Perhaps it was their past experiences that had anchored their skepticism. The task ahead felt monumental. He wondered if he should schedule one-on-one conversations with the individuals he suspected would oppose the upcoming changes. Their perspectives could provide invaluable insight, but even more crucial, it might help dissolve the inertia that threatened to paralyze the program. Yet with each internal revelation came a new layer of self-doubt. And what of Stanley? The fallout of his first question still lingered, rearing its head as he envisioned the man retaliating if he felt threatened. Confronting Stanley head-on could ignite a firestorm rather than extinguishing embers of doubt. How was he to manage the political undercurrents of office dynamics while staying true to his goals? The night deepened, casting shadows across the room, and his thoughts turned to the individuals he needed to approach. Could he create a safe space for dissenters to voice their concerns without feeling judged? Or would they see him as a foe, pushing unwelcome changes? It became clear, this was no longer merely a matter of implementing a pilot program. It was about crafting a cultural movement, a collective shift in mindset. He needed to frame these discussions not as a confrontation, but as an invitation to join a worthy cause. Marcus closed the notebook, feeling a strange sense of clarity amidst the recurrence of doubt. If he could harness empathy, perhaps he would find connection instead of confrontation. It would require courage beyond what he had summoned thus far, forcing him to step out of the shadows of his doubts and embrace the role of both a leader and a learner. As he prepared for the challenges of the next day, a pivotal thought settled within him: he would not only rise to the occasion but also invite others to climb alongside him. The words echoed in his mind. The time had come to face his fears, not merely as an innovator but as a transformative leader. His resolve strengthened. He stood and glanced at the clock. Dawn would arrive soon, bringing with it the opportunity for meaningful dialogue. The potential for conflict lingered, but so did the promise for immeasurable growth. Little did he know, the challenges of that following day would test every fiber of his leadership resolve. As he drifted into sleep, he couldn't shake the nagging thought of whether he was prepared to confront the storm brewing on the horizon. Would he emerge as the leader they needed or succumb to the chaos that threatened to envelope him? As dawn broke over the city, Marcus awakened, the soft golden light streaming through the curtains illuminating his determined expression. The trepidation that had accompanied him into sleep now transformed into a resolute sense of purpose. He put on a tailored suit, meticulously selecting every detail to project the confident leader he was striving to be, a man capable of melding ambition with compassion. The office buzzed with the familiar morning energy as Marcus prepared to embark on his day of crucial conversations that could ignite either a rebellion or a renaissance within the corporate culture. Entering the boardroom, he felt the familiar weight of expectation settle on his shoulders, yet this time it was different. He was armed not only with strategic plans but also a newfound vision for empathy in leadership. "Thank you everyone for being here today," he began, his voice steady and purposeful. "Today isn't just about an initiative, it's about us redefining what it means to lead." The palpable tension in the air crackled as he glanced around the room, gauging reactions. The room was filled with skepticism and curiosity, a precarious balance he aimed to shift toward understanding and collaboration. "Emma, let us start with the marketing team's pilot program," he said warmly, inviting the bright, enthusiastic young woman to outline their collaborative visions. As she presented, he felt the room leaning forward, re-engaging with one another, shifting from disconnected employees to a cohesive unit focused on change. Marcus facilitated the dialogue, inviting each voice to contribute, nurturing a culture of inclusion and trust that had been absent for far too long. During lunch, he had arranged one-on-one sessions with key board members who had expressed doubts. These conversations were not merely strategic, they were transformative. Sitting across from Stanley, he saw the skepticism etched in the older man's features but recognized something deeper, a yearned connection hidden beneath the corporate armor. "Stanley," Marcus started gently, "I know these changes seem risky. But I want you to feel empowered to voice any concerns you have." As they spoke, Marcus realized that his fears paled in comparison to the inherent value of fostering open communication. Stanley began to unveil his worries about job security, reigniting old fears of stability amidst change. "It's not easy for some of us, Marcus," Stanley admitted. "Change can feel like losing everything we've worked for." Understanding surged within Marcus. What if the fear of losing tradition masked a yearning for growth? That insight became his anchor. As they continued their conversation, Marcus listened intently, sharing his journey with empathy and courage, connecting his ambitions with the collective goals of the board. Afterward, as he rose to leave, he could see the glint of respect in Stanley's eyes, a flicker of understanding that had been absent before. In that exchange, Marcus had forged a bridge to transformation, liberating both their minds from pre-existing paradigms. Weeks passed, and the pilot program kicked off amidst unexpected enthusiasm. Employee engagement soared, with testimonials pouring in, stories of connection blooming where isolation had once prevailed. The marketing department thrived, utilizing their voices and creativity, and productivity metrics revealed a profound correlation between employee satisfaction and bottom-line results. Standing at the helm of these changes, Marcus felt the weight on his shoulders lift. He had stepped into his authenticity, a CEO defined not by numbers alone but by the people behind those digits. As quarterly results rolled in, the numbers didn't just reflect growth, they echoed something deeper, a revolution in corporate culture rooted in compassion. His heart swelled with pride as he realized that success was no longer tethered solely to financial gain, it blossomed from the relationships built within those walls. He had proven that empathy and ambition coexisted beautifully. The culmination of his journey arrived. During a company-wide meeting where he stood before his team, beaming with gratitude, confidence solidifying in his voice. Today, we celebrate not only our financial achievements but the profound transformation we've all embraced together, he proclaimed. The applause that followed resonated with genuine appreciation, not just for the results but for the depths they had collectively traversed. In that moment, Marcus achieved a newfound state, a harmonious blend of a devoted father and a visionary leader. He had conquered the most challenging journey of his life, balancing accountability with humanity, ambition with connection. The void that once echoed within him transformed into courage, creating not just a culture of productivity, but a sanctuary of shared aspirations that celebrated each individual. As he looked out over the smiling faces of his colleagues, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The ambition that had once overshadowed his life now served a greater purpose, a reminder that true success stemmed from listening and leading with heart. In closing, he invited everyone to join the adventure beyond their comfort zones. Let us continue building not just a company, but a community, one that thrives on compassion, innovation, and shared growth. As the applause erupted louder, Marcus knew the journey had only begun, yet he welcomed every step ahead. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a catalyst for change, expanding the horizons of what leadership could truly mean. Take a stand today. You need to subscribe now to witness more stories of personal transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and amplify these messages of change. Comment your reactions and theories about Marcus's evolution and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for unparalleled journeys of growth and empathy. Don't wait even one more second.